Am I the a-hole for selling my late grandparents' ranch even though they asked me not to? Long story short, my grandparents used to live on this ranch for almost 60 years and both passed on the property. My mother was raised there and so were my siblings and I, so there's quite a lot of sentimental value to the house. There's also a lot of monetary value to the property. The problem is the upkeep. Especially as a single 28-year-old with a moderate pay job. Which is what I told my grandfather years ago when he told me wanted the house to be my inheritance to raise my own family like he did his. It became a running thing with him telling me I needed to get comfortable with the house for when it's mine, me saying I'd just sell it and him arguing with me about that. He sadly passed early last year quite suddenly and true to his word, left the house to me amongst other assets. I decided I'd try make the old man happy and accepted the responsibility. For the past year I've been trying to make everything work with fluctuating success, but ultimately, the house is somewhat of a sinkhole. On top of that, I've been headhunted for a job across the country with potential to move overseas within the next year. After long internal deliberations I decided to just sell the house. When I told my sister, she lost her shit. She says I'm disrespecting the old man's wishes by selling it to a stranger and should rather let her and her husband have it. I told her she could have it immediately, as long as she could pay the market value for the house. She thinks it's unfair to ask for money for a house I got for free and offered to stay in it and in return she'll upkeep it herself. I was planning on using the money from the sale for a place when I move though, so that also wouldn't work out. There's a lot of tension now and she's even trying to rally family members against me. I get the old man wouldn't be happy with this if he were alive, but frankly, and lovingly, he isn't and I shouldn't burden myself, right? Am I the a-hole for calling out my dog sitter for doubling her charge 4 days before our flight? My husband, 33M, and I, 35F, have two small dogs, Pip, 5M, and Skip, 17M. We both work and live below our means and this allowed us to purchase a home and have some savings. We enjoy travel with the strategic use of miles, promos, and reciprocal travel friendships. I budget carefully and pre-plan everything so we have enough to live. Aside from our regular jobs, we also watch dogs on the side. We usually do so below market rate because we understand how inflated dog sitting fees have become. We usually pet sit for about $30/dog/day. Sometimes we even dog sit for free if they are a friend or family members or if it is financially tight for some of our regular clients. We love animals and we are very understanding of other people's means. A couple of our friends moved away and some have become too busy. We started using a friend of mine named Betty. She had been charging us $30 per day for Pip and $35 per day for Skip. She stays at our house and sat for us with no issue at that rate 2 times prior. In Sept, I informed her we were taking a longer trip to visit my husband's aunt for Thanksgiving as she has cancer. We told her it would just be Skip. After doing the math, it made sense to pay the fees and fly with Pip. She agreed. A few weeks before our trip, the sitter says she cannot watch Skip on Thanksgiving and Black Friday because her mom booked a cabin for them that didn't allow pets. So we scrambled to find someone to take Skip for those days. Although he does not have major medical issues and takes no meds, he is deaf, blind, has doggy dementia, and is incontinent. The incontinent part is usually puts people off taking him, so we were very anxious. But after some time, we found a sitter willing to take him those days and Betty agreed to pick him up for the remainder of the days. Then 4 days before we leave for our trip, Betty says she will keep her rate at $65 per day because she will be traveling from the cabin then picking up Skip. I called her out on this because we only needed to get an additional sitter because of the change in her plans. For reference, the other dog sitter was going to charge us $50 per day. I would have booked her for the whole thing, but Betty said she would charge us just an additional day for the pickup. My husband and I both assumed it would still be at our regular rate because she had not informed us otherwise over the 3 months we had planned this. I told her it was not cool that she is doubling our rate right before we are about to fly. I didn't tell her I wasn't going to pay the extra rate. I asked for a compromise and for her to be more upfront of any extra charges in the future. Betty then grew very uncomfortable with our interaction and basically backed out of watching him entirely. Am I the a-hole for telling my half-sister that her father might have been in my life longer than my dad, but I will never be walked down the aisle by her mom's affair partner? I, 27F, have a half-sister, 25F. We share the same mom, but she cheated on my dad while they were married, and my half-sister is the result of that. Mom ended up marrying her dad after the affair was revealed and DNA was established. Apparently he wouldn't have married Mom if my half-sister hadn't been his. My parents shared custody of me until I was just about to turn 8, literally 2 weeks before my birthday, and then my dad passed away in an accident. I was at school and it was his parenting time with me, so I saw him that day. It really destroyed me. I ended up living with my mom, obviously. I always knew about the tensions between my parents and my dad and my mom's husband. I always knew about the affair because my aunt, Mom's sister, was very open about it and she would use every opportunity to call my mom and her husband out. My mom is still married to my half-sister's dad. He tried to be a dad to me. I do think he loves me. He claims me as his other daughter. All that stuff. But I still see him as not my dad and as the person who slept with my mom and got her pregnant while she was married to my dad. He does not get the fatherly role in my life now. Whenever I see him and my mom I am civil, but we are not close. My relationship with my half-sister isn't that close either, but I know none of this is her fault, so I try to have a sibling relationship with her. After I got engaged she told me she couldn't wait to see our dad walk me down the aisle. That's when I told her it would never happen, and when she said it should because he has been there longer than my dad ever was, I told her it didn't matter to me because I would never be walked down the aisle by mom's affair partner. She told me that was 26 years ago and I said yeah, it was, and I don't remember it happening, but he does not get rewarded and I am not disrespecting my dad's memory like that. She told me I shouldn't be acting like this still, and what do I think of her when I hate her parents and especially her dad that much. She told me I should appreciate him more for trying to be a good dad to me, and I always rejected him and treated him like shit. Am I the a-hole for telling my aunt to keep her gifts since my kids couldn't care less about them? I have 2 toddler sons. They're just like any other toddler and are pretty self-absorbed. Currently, one adores cars and the other loves the color red. Toddler 1 won't play with anything but cars and toddler 2 will only play with red toys. My mom hosted a party the other night and one of my aunts came. She bought a bunch of gifts for all the kids. The older kids were respectful and accepted their gifts, but my son simply glanced at the toys, noticed they weren't cars or red, and moved on to something else. I thanked her for the toys and made a joke about how unpredictable toddlers are after realizing that she looked upset, but she rolled her eyes and said that was rude. I told her that they're toddlers and she said so? My kids knew how to say thank you by the time they were 3. I told her that they can say please and thank you, but they're still learning. She made a noise and said learning to be rude. I told her she was being a little sensitive and that they're literally babies. They don't even understand the concepts of being rude or ungrateful. She got annoyed and said fine then, don't expect any more presents after today, and that she hates entitled parents like me who are blinded by their children and think they can do no wrong. I said whatever, and told her she could keep the gifts she bought for today since my kids couldn't care less about them. She got all red in the face and said now she knows why the boys are so rude, but I just grabbed the kids and my husband and left. I was extremely angry at the moment, but now I'm just in disbelief. Who gets offended by a toddler? My mom says my aunt is very upset with me and is threatening to uninvite us from her Christmas dinner, and is hosting this year, unless I apologize and promise to raise my kids better. My mom thinks we're being ridiculous and I should just say sorry, but I said no. Am I the a-hole for telling my kids that if they don't go to my wedding I will not be attending Terry's? I'll start at the beginning. My ex-husband was a good father but a terrible husband. I divorced him when my oldest was 14 and youngest was 10. Well, he ended up spiraling and the kids were exposed to that. I was blamed for ruining Dad. He got better after a few years but ending up doing it again when he learned I was dating. So the kids kept trying to get me not to date since it will affect their dad. It was an awful time since to the kids I was still responsible for what he did and reacted to things. In the end I just kept my dating on the low end, which wasn't hard since it wasn't introducing the kids to the men anyways. All I had to change was not posting on social media. Also yes, I sent the kids to therapy. They all stopped when they hit 18 or my middle child refused to talk, so I pulled him. The oldest is now 25 and youngest is 21 and I got proposed to. I sat them down and told them. They were not happy and were pissed I was doing this to Dad. Lots of talk later and I thought it was good. The wedding is in 2 weeks. I got a text from all the kids saying they will not be at my wedding, that they need to support Dad during this time. I had enough and texted them that if they do not go to my wedding it will damage our relationship and I will not be attending their own weddings when they get married. They were angry and it started an argument and all of them think I am a huge jerk. I truly hate that I can't do anything that makes me happy since it will affect my ex.